The latest Consumer Price Index (CPI) report for November 2024, released by the National Bureau of Statistics, indicates a continued rise in inflationary pressures across the country. The headline gave an inflation rate increase to 34.60%, marking a 0.72% point rise from October's figure of 33.88%. and a notable 6.40% increase compared to November 2023. This spike is attributed to higher prices of essential goods and services, particularly in food, housing, transportation, and utilities. As such, food inflation remains a major driver, surging 39.93% year-on-year, driven by the rising costs of staples such as yam, rice, grains, and vegetable oil across the states. Analysis reveal, Bauchi, Kebbi, and Anambra recorded the highest headline inflation rates, while Delta, Benue, and Katsina experienced slower increases. Similarly, food inflation was most severe in Sokoto, Yobe, and Edo. To this end, the rising inflation continues to reflect the mounting cost of living crisis across the country, posing significant economic challenges for Nigerians. This and more will be a focus on the program. I am Eucharia Clinton, and thanks for joining us on Nigeria Today. Joining me in the studio for the conversation is Adefolari Olamilekan. He's a political economist and a development researcher. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thanks for having me.
Also with us in the studio is Yusho Aliu. He's an economist and also a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much, UK.
And by the way, before we go on, congratulations on your award, the Professional Fellowship Doctorate Award.
Thank you very much.
Issued by the Institute of Professional Economics and Policy Management, IPEPM. Congratulations.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And I remain grateful to the institution.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, straight to our conversation for tonight. The latest Consumer Price Index, CPI report, shows a significant rise in headline and food inflation. Now, considering the Central Bank of Nigeria's position that monetary policy alone cannot tackle inflation, what physical measures should the government prioritize to address these challenges effectively?
Very interesting that CBN have come out to say that monetary policy alone cannot tackle inflation. Not like what we were told some years back that monetary policy will help us to address inflation. I can remember some 8 years ago, that was one of the aggressive hawkish drive of CBN under the management of Emefiele. But the new CBN governor is now saying, okay, monetary policy alone cannot help us to address inflation. Although earlier this year, we started inflation with 24. Now, at the middle of the year, it revised to 33. And since then, it has not gone down below 33. Now, we are now at 34 points ahead. Now, one of the key issues is this. Even though monetary policy cannot help us to address inflation, fiscal policy is called to question to come and save the day. But you can also see there is this contention between the fiscal policy of the government, which the CBN has been calling out. I remember in the month of August when the CBN read out his own aspect of argument why inflation goes up. They said there is a disconnection between fiscal policy and monetary policy. And they pinpoint to the actual fault in the fiscal policy of the government, the removal of fuel subsidy, and some endogenous factors which the government implement through its policy, particularly in the area of taxation. Taxation in terms of foreign exchange, foreign imported goods into the country, and other areas like that they have identified as challenges to it. And that brings the cost, particularly on transportation, which also impacted on inflation that we are seeing today. But we just hope that what they have said will help us to understand furthermore why inflation continues to rise in Nigeria.
Now, having said that, Olamilekan, Yusho, with food inflation hitting at 39.93% and headline inflation at 34.60%, what role can fiscal policies such as targeted subsidies or increased investment in agriculture play in reducing the cost of essential goods?
You see, the challenges are structural in nature. Until we understand that neither the monetary policy nor the fiscal policy can bring prices to a desirable condition, we'll continue to get it wrong. I'm so happy and optimistic that the bank, Apex Bank, admitted that monetary policy cannot bring inflation down. And that has been my argument for a very long period. You know, when MPR is raised, it is raised with condition that is going to check excess liquidity. But do you know what is obtainable presently? Cash crunch. The liquidity is not even there, but inflation is going up. And when you have a condition of that scenario, what do? You check the population. You check the availability of the product. And you check the consumption pattern. These are things that you must understand, that why food inflation always in an economy that wants to depend on what it produces. Over 12 months ago, Good Morning Nigeria in this postulated that, look, all the measures we are thinking can bring down inflation. We cannot critically bring the actual scenario into consideration if we fail to understand the demand factors. Nigeria has a large population. Festive period attracts more demands, and that demands keep prices persistently increasing, because whatever you brought, people are ready to buy them, but if they are not in sufficient quantity, definitely is going to affect prices. Remember, in your background, Sokoto is facing one of the greatest challenge, while Benue, it's simple to understand the scenario. Benue is a food basket of the nation. When yam is increasing in Sokoto, it will not increase compared to Benue State, the producer. But these are some of the things that obviously we have to devise some structural measures to balance this demand and supply. If we fail to do that, then inflation is coming. 24 months ago, we discussed there is going to be a scenario called cost of living crisis. This cost of living crisis is just easy to understand from the household condition. And from the question you ask, how? No, we have to live with it. We have to live with inflation because we are all consumers and our consumption will be increasing, especially now that we are approaching the peak period of festivities. There will be more demands, there will be less supplies, because even the movement of people in transportation and the transportation of goods will bring changes in prices relatively. Remember, the rate we are discussing is November. Now, the worst scenario will come when we are to discuss December price situation in Nigerian economy.
Okay, Yusha, now back to you, Adefolari. Like I earlier also mentioned this, the central bank has repeatedly emphasized the need for collaboration, between the monetary and the fiscal policies. In your opinion, how can this synergy, just break it down, how can this synergy help stabilize rising inflation, especially in sectors like food and transportation?
I think the first question we need to ask is, how much is the government spending on food production? There has been a dichotomy between food production and food security. That's why the government quickly give a new nomenclature to the Ministry of Agriculture, calling Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. So the problem we have is there is no food security in Nigeria. Now you're talking about the marriage between fiscal policy and monetary policy. The challenge is that the implementation of this policy has been disconnected. Now, it's one hand, I really love what Dr. Yusha was talking about, the monetary policy and the supply chain issue. Now, there's also a supply chain on the part of the fiscal policy and the monetary policy coming together. Now, on the hand of the monetary policy, MPR is being raised, Treasury bill is being sold, bond is being sold. We're not looking at all this, although I don't want to go into the technicality of why this inflation remains. Even though we have said we are going to live with it, we are going to live with it. It doesn't mean that because there is lack of supply, but because the policy of the government is also disconnecting, causing this inflation to happen. bond is being sold, treasury paper is being sold. Now, on the part of the CBN, the valuation of the currency is there, the depreciation of Naira is there, and those also have effect on inflation. I don't want us to go into technicality, but let us make it, in a simple analysis so that Nigerians watching us can understand. Now, the monetary policy of the government has three major work: price stability, through interest rate on bank loans and the rest of them. The cash reserve ratio, in terms of what banks can keep. As we speak right now, no bank branch can keep the highest money they can keep is 100 million they can dispense in a day. Not like before, they can dispense up to 500 million naira a day. And that has also caused what is called the cash crunch. That also is affecting. Now, treasury bills and bonds paper that the CBN is selling, it goes with over 9% interest. Now, ask yourself, where are they going to get those interest money to pay the people who are buying those treasury bills? Now, it is out of the depreciation that the Naira is suffering. That's where they get it. Because the more Naira they are giving out to collect the few dollars in circulation, it costs it. Now, on the physical side is this: the tax policy of the government, how is it being implemented? The first subsidy is there, which most of us know as one of the fiscal policies of the government. But the other aspect of it that most of us don't even want, are careless about, the tax policy, the aggressive nature of the government looking for money here and there, the loans and the rest of them. How are all this coming together to also cause inflation in Nigeria? It is because it put pressure on the supply chain that he's talking about. Government is not funding agriculture the way it is being funded. Why is it that there is food crisis in Sokoto? Although we need to also mention the issue of security added to this, and that falls under fiscal policy of the government. And if government is not taking care of security, how are they going to undo inflation? But simply, the inflation we are suffering today is as a result of disconnection between the fiscal policy of the government and monetary policy, which boils down to how government marshal its policy to address the simple, basic, general increase in price, which inflation is all about.
Now, you shall talking about the policies. You talked about implementation. You mentioned implementation.
Exactly.
The fiscal policy and, of course, even the monetary policies.
Yeah.
Now, what specific fiscal intervention can be adopted, to address, the regional disparities, and, of course, provide relief to low-income households?
You need to understand the economic scenario, that's the economic environment. From the Bureau of Statistics angle, the General Household Survey has vindicated a lot of factors that are hindering production, supply, and general consumerism, that is affordability. Now, you have unemployment very high, and you want to increase taxes, and you have increased NPR. That NPR will directly translate to general price. If I am a producer and I have secured funds from commercial bank A, and suddenly NPR is raised and my interest rate changes to higher level, my general output price will also increase, and that directly changes the prices to a higher price in the economy. That is from that angle. General fiscal reform that is about taking place, that projected value-added tax to be increasing based on yearly scenario. It's very dangerous when you are adding consumption taxes to an ever-increasing inflation, and we expect to control the general price stability. So you have to, on the fiscal measures, you have to broadly understand the tax base, and then you consider the tax rate, and you consider the taxpayer before considering the principle of quid pro quo, returns benefit. Because for any tax payment, you are not paying tax for anybody to go and celebrate Christmas. You are paying tax for that same tax to provide essential conditions for your economic life. So therefore, the connectivity between fiscal policy and monetary policy is disconnected. The production technique being adopted to increase supply is not yielding result, because up to now it's not scientific. It is crude method of production, and that is why you find food supply prices always on the high. and in an economy where you are expecting to feed yourself. And I've said in terms of UK, we should stop misleading policymakers that we must produce what we eat. It is necessary condition. Do you understand? To produce and consume. Listen.
Let me know I want to say something.
Yeah, and I don't want you to say it. I want you to complete my own assertion.
Okay.
You, no matter how you intend to make production to be sufficient enough for an economy, you cannot be like Chinese, who have created special economic zones and they are working.
But we can start from somewhere.
Listen carefully. Starting from somewhere is a scenario that has to do with policy measures on ground, and also with the attitudinal change, even the consumption pattern. Are you getting it? So, the scenario of production, we need to understand the size of our population before we understand the metric tons requirement of what will make food prices stable. These are the necessary conditions we must understand. That will help policymakers to draw attention on the inputs they are making in the production lines, in the economic zones. We need palm oil. It dramatically, a 5 kilogram, 5 liters of vegetable oil produced in Nigeria changes dramatically from 12,500 to 22,000. So on earth, price, how do you comprehend the supply network and the price stability in that scenario with a limited income grouping? Anytime you are looking into variables in an economy, you must understand the consumers and the taste of the consumers, because the Hixian analysis always reveals Eukarya is consuming A because she drives satisfaction, but with a price, heavy price. But the highest price that can disorganize consumer is price that he cannot afford. And that is why the understanding the nature of effective demand also is very necessary. Understanding effective demand, because we have consumers who are autonomous in nature, who doesn't have income. And that is what is also giving a lot of pressures as far as production and sales is concerned. Manufacturers Association, for instance, have complained bitterly that after producing all goods in trillions are wasting, because consumers doesn't have the ability. The effective demand is not there. So therefore, for you to balance monetary policy, fiscal policy, you have to come back to understand the market scenario and consumers' arrangements.
Thank you very much, Yushau. Now back to you, Adefolani. You know, quite a lot has been said. But what immediate measures can the government implement to effectively manage the inflation? Because, you know, when we talk a lot of talk, but then the ordinary man on the street wants to know when will the prices of goods
I think we
drop.
Exactly. For me, we also need to educate the ordinary man that first and foremost, the principles of economy that we are practicing is not homegrown. When he was talking about consumer attitude, consumer reaction, we also need to look at the producer's reaction, which on this part of my argument is the government, because the government is the major biggest producer. So the economic principle we are practicing, majority of Nigerians don't understand. And when he was talking about supply and demand, it becomes strange that even the principles and law of supply and demand has been shattered in this country, to the point that if you begin to produce something today, the price keep going up. And meanwhile, they say the more demand that comes, the more the price comes down. It has been shattered. Why? Because the biggest producer is not playing his game, his role as the biggest producer, which is the government. Now, the simple fact, the simple solutions that we can quickly say in the immediate term, although as a political economist, we are always very fearful of immediate term solutions. And immediate term solutions have been misinterpreted in Nigeria to be intervention, palliative, giving handout, which cosmetic in nature. So when you ask me this question, I was a little bit immediate term. That means you want me to tell the government to intervene, to bring money, to share money, to buy rice, to do this. Those are not immediate term solutions that could help us to address. He has made mention of two things which I'm going to dwell on. One is productivity. How much are we investing, which I also alluded to, how much are we investing in food production? Federal government has over 500 hectares of land in Maraba. What are they doing with that 500 hectares of land? They promised to be planting cassava there. The last time I visited that area, till now, I don't see cassava. All I see is estates springing up within that area. That would have been a productive area to produce food that could even help between New Cairo and some satellite area in Abuja. But they are not doing it. Then the other aspect has to do with what is the strategic policy of the government when it comes to now giving out intervention for farmers. Because what we are looking at is how to break the backbone of high price of food in Nigeria. So those interventions that government have been giving all the years, how have they been monitoring and following up on those interventions? When they talk about uptake farmers, uptake buyers, we discover that it is portfolio people that will go and buy those things from farmers, then bring it to the market and become a challenge. Government have been saying they have been giving grains, but what we see that when they baggage those grains, will they still sell it at high price? What are the costs? So we must reduce transportation costs. That's one of the key things. So how do we remove transportation costs? How is government participating in transportation? All we see is that they are giving buses to National Union of Road Transport, Lorry Drivers Association. What about government owned?
But that is something.
The thing is that it's not followed up to the level that we can see the benefit immediately. Those guys that government is giving those things, they want to make profit. And that's what he's pointing at.
Okay, you talked about attitudinal change.
Yes.
On the part of, citizens, right?
Yes, all. Policy approach. And then consumption patterns.
Now, good. What policy makes, can the government adopt to balance inflation control and economic growth?
You see, government has taken the measure, but failed to implement it. The greatest challenge when inflation is mentioned, I'm very passionate on inflation. I love the topic, but I don't love the content. Do you understand? Inflation is persistent, seemingly irresistible. That irresistibility will make you feel the impact of inflation, because when you go to get bundles of goods, you have to go without some because your income is limited. Now listen, very easy, immediate solution. Our food, I have said it in a context. Check the population size, check the number, check the food. Whoever told you that we have enough food? Give the household economic power to get those goods, and tomorrow go and find whether you find them. You are seeing them because consumer doesn't have the power to get them home. And that brings the question of import waivers, which the government has advanced. But is it practicable? Is it on ground? We should stop doing window dressing with this inflation. At 34% is already a very dangerous scenario. It's double digit and multiplied. Do you understand? Inflation was 11.5% yesterday, but today is 33. If you check your income and you check the multiplicity of the inflation, you will now understand why you are on a single meal per day. So there is need to not just to give window dressing to immediate solution, like Mr. Adefolari mentioned. We are not proponent of sharing a bag of rice that will expire in the next 15 days. And you go back to the same scenario. We are a proponent of bringing the policy that will sustain the supply, sustain the price stability, and then influence the consumer confidence.
Okay, in 30 seconds, Adefolari, Yushau had mentioned a homegrown solution to our problem. Exactly. What are these homegrown solutions? In 30 seconds.
Number one, let the CBN reduce their hawkish and aggressive MPR rate. Then second, let the government work on the fiscal aspect. He made mention of aspect of whereby they have given waiver for people to import food. Why should government only allow private individuals to import the food? Why can't government import the food directly by itself?
But we've always advocated for private.
You know why? Because those private people, the issue is this: you can be competitive in this importation. Government can import. It can also, he has given waiver to the people because that price stability that we want. By the time the private people bring their own, they will add the cost of it. And that is what the foreign exchange, we talk about the monetary policy aspect.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll wrap up today's episode of Nigeria Today. A very big thank you to Dr. Yushau Aliyu, economist and a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For your contribution. And also Adefolari Olabilekon is a political economist and a development researcher. Thank you so much for.
And I use this opportunity to congratulate my friend. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And thank you for being part of the program. Remember, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30. 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch this episode and others